Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody. And Bill, this is, I'm a little uncomfortable here. We're taping, we're using a new method of taping. That's why I'm wearing these ridiculous earbuds.
So hopefully, there should be no difference for the user, for the consumer. It should look the same, it should sound the same. But for us, we're on a different platform. There's different bells and whistles around us. So forgive us if we're getting acclimated to the system. Or
if you try to watch this and you only see one of us, or if one of us is super loud, who knows?
Now, I want to talk to you about, I caught a little snippet of your interview with Hannah Trudeau. I'm pronouncing her name right?
You are, yes.
Who writes for The Hill. Used to be at The Beast with you, right?
Yep, that's right.
And you were talking about what's going on with progressives, what's going on with Kyrsten SInema, and you just wrote a piece linking Sinema and Liz Cheney as your two heroes.
Yeah. By the way, is it bad when you write something in all sincerity and people think that you're trolling? This is like, number one, this isn't satire. It's not even trolling. This is my honest opinion. So,
I sympathize with people's cynical attitudes about your intent with your writing. But what I found amusing was, as you were describing your affinity for cinema in the clip you have on Twitter, I was brought back to the Braless Wonder episode on Seinfeld when they're in the trial and Jerry's on the stand and he's trying not to. He's trying to protect Sulan Mishki, and even though he's supposed to be on Kramer's side, and then he finally cracks. He's like, "I'm crazy about her. I love her whole freewheelin, free swinging attitude." That's how I felt when you were praising Sinema. That you were on the witness stand. You couldn't keep it inside.
Well, I think there is something that is mysterious about her and eccentric, and I think that the same thing that I find kind of cool about her drives other people crazy. Obviously, like they don't like that that thing, that the mysteriousness. We don't exactly know what her deal is. We don't know. I guess mysterious is the word for it. I kind of think that's cool. Most people, apparently, a lot of people on the left certainly are incensed by it.
Now, for as long as I've known you, Matt, as candid a person as you are, as open-minded as you can be, you have red lines. You're still a conservative's conservative. What is it? I mean, Sinema's not a conservative. She's pro-choice. As frustrating as it is for progressives that we don't know what she wants in this negotiation, neither do you. I mean, she might be angling for things that you don't like. She might be settling for a $2 trillion bill where you want it to be zero. So what is it exactly that you think is so impressive that makes you want to celebrate her?
First of all, to your point, I mean, she has already supported trillions of dollars in spending. And would probably would support, trillions of dollars, just not trillions more dollars, just not the 3.5 trillion that the left wants. Let me just talk a little bit about how I came to write this piece, because the first kind of epiphany I had was, like, it's weird that of all the people in the Senate, the one that I respect the most is a Democrat. Like, that alone was an epiphany for me. Like, I used to be, as you know, Bill, I hate to admit it, I used to be like a big fan of like Marco Rubio and then other politicians who are not in the Senate, but people like Nikki Haley and I've become disenchanted with them. So and I do not really
you respect Kyrsten SInema More than anybody, any of the 100 senators, she is the one you respect the most in that chamber. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I would have to think about it, but she's like, I would say she's my favorite senator right now. And Joe Manchin's up there too, which is bizarre, right? These are both Democrats. And I probably philosophically, I disagree with them on a lot of stuff. But part of the reason that they're become my favorites is that almost all of the Republicans have discredited themselves. And part of the way they've discredited themselves, it's not based on, damn these iPods, whatever they are.
AirPods.
Are they supposed to be pointing down, Bill?
I don't know.
I don't even know. I'm out of touch with the youths of America. It's not just ideologically. It's not even primary ideologically. It's that they have like kind of beclowned themselves by basically changing and by succumbing to Trumpism and MAGA. And I dig Sinema for being tough and standing up. Like, I happen to agree with her. I don't want to spend $3.5 trillion after we've already spent other trillions. But I just also have to admire her for her toughness and stubbornness and contrarianness. I admire that, and I do respect that. And then I think just aesthetically, I am intrigued by her. She moves in mysterious ways, is what I would say.
Now, the main progressive critique on her is that, she's not standing up for any kind of principle. She's just getting bought and paid for by pharmaceutical lobby in particular. I mean, they seem to be funding an independent expenditure effort, which I think they call it Center Forward, where they shower praise on Sinema and ads for using a lot of language that you're using, but it's all coming from a special interest group that has an agenda to make sure they don't get the business in this bill. She goes out to Arizona in the middle of negotiations and has a fundraiser with all these business lobbies, which, I mean, whatever you have to think, it's really optically bad. Should that be celebrated? Is that an example of tough, principled stand, or is that essentially cynically saying to the world, I'm for sale?
Well, look, I mean, if there's some evidence that she is like involved in a like real pay to play sort of quid pro quo corruption thing, like that's obviously not cool. If she's guilty of being a politician who wants to raise money and get reelected, then I would say welcome to the club, right? They're all pandering. I mean, AOC and Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, you could argue that the things that they're doing, like the hardline left-wing takes that they're making, is part of raising money, albeit from low-dollar donors. And I actually think that, like, ironically, that kind of partisan pandering to low-dollar donors has actually become more corrosive, arguably, than pandering to like political action committees and large corporate donors. So I guess I'm just like shocked that there's gambling taking place at Rick's in Casablanca.
But you're not trolling anybody when you say that progressive fundraising is more corrosive than corporate.
Well, it's not just well, number one, no, I'm not trolling. If what you mean is saying something that I am not sincere about in order to get hate clicks or buzz, I'm not doing that at all. I am saying things I sincerely believe in, and they may piss people off, right? And so, like, if it results in hate clicks or whatever, that is not, like, I'm not doing it just to get a rise out of people. But let me say this: it's not just the left; it's the right too, right? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's not even on a committee, right? And so, like, traditionally, the way that you would raise money is to try to work your way up and to get on a prominent committee. Like, my wife's a political fundraiser, and I can tell you that there's some committees that like raise a lot more money than others. You want to get on a committee where you can raise a lot of money, right? And like, so I just know, like, education is one that doesn't really, you could do a lot of good work on education, but like, I guess if you're on that committee, it doesn't translate into money. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is raising millions of dollars. She's not even on a committee. and the way she's raising money is by being crazy, right? And pandering to like low dollar right wing donors. And in her case, I don't even know if it's pandering. I think she actually might just be like she's like me in the sense that she's not trolling them. I think that, but my point is that like I remember reading Joe Trippy's "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." Our friend of the show, by the way, friend of Bill and Matt, Joe Trippy.
Still doing his podcast.
He's
doing that Trippy Show podcast now.
I remember reading Trippy's book, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," like 17 years ago or something, and kind of getting caught up in this utopian fantasy that if we can take, if we can take the money out of the hands of the big wigs and the back rooms and give it to like regular, individuals and they can, crowdsource and crowdfund, like how awesome that would be. And it turns out it's bad. It turns out we were better off with the big donors and the corporate PACs. Like as bad as they are, they're better than us. We suck. And so this is all a way of saying that I am not outraged by by Sinema raising money, so long as they're giving her money because of what she believes in, as opposed to her believing something because they're giving her money.
Well, I mean, I'm not convinced that Sinema is engaged in quid pro quo. Although, we might find out otherwise. I'm not quick to jump to that conclusion just because she had a fundraiser with business lobbies. Now, I don't think the business lobbies have altruistic motive. I'm sure they're trying to buy access and try to use that access to finagle elements in the bill that will be to their interest. The question is what's Sinema's motive and objective here? I mean, to your point, I think if she wanted to be an median Senate Democrat, she could take median Senate Democratic positions and raise plenty of money from the vast network of Democratic donors. I mean, it's not like every other Democratic senator is starving for cash and she's raking it in. The Democrats have done a pretty good job with fundraising in the past several election cycles. They've built a pretty solid network. So it's not like it's that hard to fund yourself to run for re-election, and you have no choice.
Think of what a rock star she could be. I mean, she could be the AOC of the Senate. She is perfectly positioned for that, or she was. I mean, if she wanted to be beloved. I mean, right now she is being chased into bathrooms and harassed while she's in a stall. Who needs that? She can't go to Reagan Airport without people harassing her, right? She could be beloved and celebrated and revered, and she could probably raise more money if she played her cards differently, right? And So I
assume, at least my operating assumption, obviously could be proven wrong with other evidence, but my operating assumption is she made a political calculation first, that the way to win in Arizona is to be, McCain-style maverick, and then from that point you say, well, how do I fund this kind of strategy going forward? I'm not going to get it from these progressive sources because they're not going to like it. These are the people willing to show up and give me money, and so I'm going to take it. Now, then the question becomes: is she going to do something in these bills that her constituents aren't going to like, and then that strategy backfires? And here's what I don't know. I don't know enough about the business community in Arizona. For example, there's this whole issue with pharmaceuticals and how they're trying to not have Medicare empowered to negotiate lower prices because that would hurt the pharmaceuticals bottom line. And we had a small number of House Democrats that pushed back against it, and seemingly, I think, have gotten knocked out of the bill at this point, though the game's not over. There's a guy named Scott Peters in San Diego who was one of the few that were trying to block it. I know there's a biotech hub in San Diego. So there's political logic to his position. As much as pharmaceuticals may be disliked nationally, if you have a lot of biotech pharmaceutical workers in your district, that's not a dangerous position to take. My sense is that Sinema is attentive to home state businesses. I know she pushed pretty hard on the minimum wage issue because the restaurant association in Arizona didn't want that. And if there are people that are sympathetic to those businesses in her state, that's not a dangerous position to take. But whether the pharmaceutical industry fits that category in Arizona, I don't know offhand. But that wouldn't surprise me. And I think she's mindful of that sort of calculation.
Yeah. Let me just say, though, I'm just taking a few notes here so I don't forget. But you were it sounds to me like, Bill, you're saying, like, she's probably not corrupt. She's probably just a smart politician. And the things that she's doing because they're smart in Arizona. That may be true. But I also think she may believe in this. And I'm okay with, like, I don't want to discount the possibility. I don't want to sound Pollyanna, but, like, she may be sincere. We're spending unprecedented amounts of money, and I'm not using that term, like, promiscuously. Like, we literally, like, way, like, insane amounts of money that would have been, I mean, her positions would have been deemed very progressive and very left-wing not that long ago, right? It seems like she had some sort of a change of heart when she was in the Arizona state legislature. And I don't know if that means that she became more moderate or if she just realized that over time, by compromising, and she can get incremental gains for her cause. But whatever the case, this is who she ran as. I mean, she ran as an Arizonan independent. And I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that this is sincere. She helped, I think this part has been underrated. She helped craft that bipartisan infrastructure bill. So she has skin in the game. Like the notion that she would say, no, no, we should pass the bill that I crafted first, like Nancy Pelosi said, that doesn't seem insane to me. Like, why wouldn't she be interested in passing the bipartisan bill she helped negotiate first? And then the last point I'll make before I shut up is, I have a sense that the left feels like she owes them her vote. Like she's a cog in their machine. Like if you were elected to the Senate as a Democrat, you are expected to do what the party bosses tell you. And she's like, F that. I'm not doing that. And that's the rebellious, brave part that I do admire.
Well, I think what's really frustrating and bedeviling progressives now, and I should say, I think this is part of an argument why I think the stuff that we do, not just you and me, but just sort of punditry in general, has merit and impact. It's not just a bunch of hot air. There's a narrative, there's a theory of the case that has taken hold amongst most progressives, that Democrats will help themselves by going big, that as far as legislative tactics are concerned, you should ask for it. You should make a big ask. You should push the Overton window. You should be willing to walk, take your marbles and go home to gain leverage, and you should fight as hard as possible against anyone standing in your way. And that's the way to negotiate from strength. And it's not like all those things are wholly ludicrous ideas. But I think we're seeing that they may have been too simplistic and too simplistically applied. And so here you are with SInema, who clearly has a different theory of the case. She clearly is not operating from your progressive worldview and vantage point. She thought that negotiating a bipartisan infrastructure bill had, whether substantive merit or political merit or both, put her name on it, stuck her neck out there. And the progressive reaction was to say, this bill is, either mildly good or actively bad, depending on whether, Bernie is a little more generous to it and AOC is more outright negative towards it. But no one is basically saying, we think this is important to pass on its own, and we're going to hold it up. We're going to essentially minimize what you think is important, Kyrsten SInema, and try to pressure you to do things our way, because our way makes the most sense. Obviously, this is clearly obvious. If you don't want to do this, the only plausible explanation is that you're corrupt, and so again, they've tried it. They are trying it, and from all I can gather, it's not working out for progressives. And it's only working out to the extent that you believe that the actual objective of Sinema and Manchin was to kill the broader Build Back Better bill, which I don't actually think is the case. But if you're going to set the bar as, well, okay, we ended up at 1.8 trillion or 2 trillion. It wasn't the 10 trillion AOC wanted. It wasn't the 6 trillion that Bernie wanted. It wasn't the 3.5 trillion that we said was the compromise for weeks and weeks. We got less than that with our strategy, but hey, it's not zero. So our strategy worked. You know, the privatist side of me says, great, you've accepted the logic that something is better than nothing, and you didn't sink the whole package. Good for you. I'm not against that as an attitude, but as a matter of what makes for good strategy, what are good models, tactical models to emulate in the future. If you got knocked down from 6 to 10 to 1.8 to 2, I'm going to question the efficacy of your tactics. And it seems to me that trying to paint Sinema and Manchin as an adversary, as an opponent, arguably motivated by bad motives, who need to be brought to heel in order to get anything, I think has given Sinema and Manchin the most power in this negotiation. Because, I mean, one, they have inherent power as individual senators in the 50-50 Senate when you try to pass on a party line vote. There's nothing you can do to take that away from them. The question becomes, what's the best way to deal with that dynamic? Browbeating them publicly, accosting them in bathroom stalls, treating them like they're corporate tools who need to be squeezed. If so long as they have the gumption to say, screw you, I'm going to go have a fundraiser in Arizona with all my business friends. If that's what their attitude is going to be about it, you're not getting anywhere. So I think it could. I mean, I can't know what would happen in the alternative time frame, but theoretically, they could have said, "Hey, Sinema, you did Sinema Portman. Good for you. Great job. Let's go past that thing. That was tough, and you did it. Let's do that, and let's sit down like friends and negotiate the broader package in a way that's going to behoove both of us." Some people might think that's the naive strategy, that you have gotten rolled the same or rolled even more. But based on what's happened here so far, and again, I can't totally assess it until we're done. But all the vibe since progressives successfully blocked Sinema Portman, execute the strategy that they laid out, which in some respect is good for their stature. When Jayapal speaks, people will listen now. I grant that. She said she had the numbers, and we didn't have the vote, but we have to presume she had the numbers. But everything from that point forward, like literally the second after that was done, Biden is saying you're gonna have to accept less than 3.5 trillion. And Jayapal said, "Yep, well, we agree." And now they're negotiating what are they going to do within a 1.8 to 2.3 trillion dollar package. So I just think, tactically speaking, trying to browbeat Sinema just hasn't worked.
Yeah. What do you do with a problem like Kyrsten? I mean, here's the thing: she is like a nonconformist, and pushing her like this may not have the outcome that people hope. She may double down. Now it's on principle. I think that there's a way of looking at this too, Bill. If you want to put on your identity politics, politically correct hat, this won't happen. But like, I could imagine a scenario where, like, if Republicans were Sinema's adversary, here's a woman who is taking a nonconformist position, and these men want her to conform and fall in line and be a cog in their machine. She has agency. She's a duly elected senator. And she's, you mentioned the first openly bisexual senator. She's being chased into a bathroom. I mean, the optics are not great. I mean, just like somehow you could imagine a scenario where she is the victim here, like she negotiated this bill that it passed the Senate. It's a bipartisan bill and they won't even give it a vote in the House. Like, this seems very unfair to me. Well,
and so we have this report now that there was an attempt at a joint statement to defend Sinema and criticize those that invaded her privacy in the bathroom. And Bernie wouldn't sign on to it unless it included a little dig at her supposed position on pharmaceutical pricing and generally, holding up, Build Back Better, when the other senators, at least one other senator, wouldn't agree to that. I think Booker, at least we know, wouldn't agree to that. Bernie's aide said, we're out. And I don't know who leaked that, but it just seems like, and this is not just a one-off. Bernie didn't want that to become public, but he had a public statement same day, openly venting. I don't know where Sinema's position is. I don't know why she's doing this or that. And AOC is on Twitter. She's thrown jabs at Sinema before, threw a jab at Manchin yesterday. It's all in a frame of these are people who don't see things our way, and we need to oppose them. Instead of, I just think letting your frustration show the way, especially the way Bernie did. You're giving away the game. You're letting them get under your skin and giving them more power. Instead of saying, trying to dial down temperature, just meeting them privately and trying to work things out without all the noise.
And the message here, is you can be a powerful, independent woman as long as you vote our way. You got to be a team player, though. And the team, and by the way, you're not calling the plays. Even though you're in the upper chamber, we're gonna run the plays. But you better fall in line because you're on our team. And she's like, no, screw that. I'm duly elected. I do things my own way. I don't, I wear, what was the shirt she wore when she presided over the Senate?
Dangerous creature.
Someone who wears a shirt like that to preside over the Senate does not care what you think of her. Does not care if you try to pressure her. May not respond well to your lobbying campaign. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. That's where I am on that. I think you know where I stand.
But if she comes out supporting a $2 trillion bill that funds a range of government programs, maybe even, it probably is not going to be the case, but even if it, got rid of the Hyde Amendment, Matt Lewis would still say, Kyrsten Sinema, she's the one I respect the most.
Well, I don't know about that. I would probably oppose the bill. I admire her. I admire her for her toughness, for her bravery, and for not being a pawn, for being an individual. Those things are philosophically neutral in the political left versus right sense. And that's what I admire about her. And I see the same thing in Liz Cheney, who stood up to her party. So both of these people, both of these women, standing up to their quote unquote team, taking a risk, a political risk, and also jeopardizing what's popular, being, in the case of Liz Cheney, I think she spent $58,000 in a 3-month span on security. And Kyrsten Sinema's example, being hounded and chased at airports and even bathrooms at universities. So I admire their courage. Doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything Sinema says. But look, when Biden and Democrats say, we've got a problem, and it's these 2 senators who won't get in line. No, your problem is 52 senators. A majority of the Senate is not in line with what you want to do. Never mind the 60 votes you might have needed to pass something this big, or the 67 votes you actually once upon a time might have needed. You can't even get, you can't get the 50. That's your problem, Democrats. And they're making it out to be that Sinema, and by the way, Joe Manchin, even if Sinema did fall in line, you still got Joe Manchin. So they have a problem.
I mean, and we sort of know more about what Manchin wants to the extent that you can take anything he says at total face value because he says all sorts of things at different times. But he seems to be, and this is based on the most, I think it was an Axios report, which again is not, I don't know if, trying to remember my mind, what has he said on record or what has been reported in private? But I think he has said on record that he doesn't want to feed an entitlement mentality, which is a pretty broad ideological missive at the underpinning of the package. It doesn't preclude him from supporting the lion's share of it because he hasn't literally said I'm against X, Y, or Z. It was the Axios story that said what we're hearing privately is that he's told progressives, you gotta pick one of these three working families initiatives, child tax credit, paid leave, or I forget what the third one was. Maybe it was childcare. So if Manchin is really opposed to the ideological direction of the entire package, that's a tough place for Biden to be in. Because it becomes a lot harder to negotiate things line by line if he just doesn't agree with the basic premise of it. Again, maybe this is just posturing on Manchin's part, so we can drive a hard bargain. But it does make me wonder, to what extent did Biden and Schumer talk to Manchin months ago before going down the path? How much were they aware that he would be difficult before, planning this marker?
Well, Schumer did sign that.
we know that from July.
Memo or whatever.
Right. And I guess we don't know if Biden saw that. But you gotta think that Schumer at least had some kind of informal relaying, look, here's roughly where Manchin's at, and it's pretty tight, and I want to move him up from it. I mean, keep in mind that agreement did not. I think it's been misreported. That agreement did not set a ceiling on what Manchin would agree to. It said Manchin would not guarantee his support for anything beyond this. So he set a floor, not a ceiling, in that agreement. But it's a floor pretty far removed from what the initial ask is. And you see, you just got to wonder to what extent they kind of knew this going in. And if they knew it, how well did they match people's expectations? Because I would say fairly poorly in that regard.
And keep in mind, a lot of the criticism of Sinema has been we don't know what she wants. Well, she doesn't talk to the media. I don't know exactly what she wants. I think she wants to pass the bipartisan bill first that she helped craft. But maybe Schumer does. The story about Manchin was he won't tell us. And now it turns out that he did tell Schumer. Just because he doesn't tell Meet the Press doesn't mean he's not telling Senate leaders, right? And so I think that was a disservice to Manchin, this whole thing about this narrative about how nobody knows what he wants. Well, actually, Schumer at least had a good sense of what he was willing to do.
Well, but I think Manchin used a lot of word salads. Even though that was on paper, you still have to kind of wonder exactly what his end game is. And I think all evidence is that their degrees of inscrutability are beneficial to the negotiating position. Everyone's chasing them. Everyone's trying to figure out what can I do to make you happy? It's not what do you do to make me happy. Look, what can I do to make you happy? That puts them in the driver's seat. So, so you can try to flagellate them and say this is not fair and how dare you not tell us what you want, but there's no fair in negotiation so long as you get what you want at the end of the day. There's fairness in fairness has merit in terms of building trust to come to negotiate agreement. But all indications are progressives are going to end up accepting what Manchin and Sinema are going to offer them.
What I think you can't do is lie. You can't say if you make it $2 trillion, I'll support that, and then back away like that. You can't do that. But there's nothing that says you have to show all your cards. Well, so
I think the game. If you're not honest, if you say something one day and say something different the next day, mean, that's not good for you because now your word can't be trusted. And so when you try to draw a red line, no one's going to believe you. We heard that SInema told Biden, if you don't pass Bibb first, I'm not going to vote for reconciliation. If it's true that she said that,
yeah,
but
that was reported I think in Politico playbook.
Right.
It was if you don't pass it or if you delay it, by the way.
Right.
Was yeah.
Now, if she did say that and she's not sticking to that, then that hurts her own negotiating position because she might not be believed by her negotiating partners. I just don't know if that was actually said in that way. Okay, here we are with delay, and her statement afterwards was not, okay, I'm done here. It was complaining. It was complaining about breaches of trust, but she didn't totally take herself out of the ball game. Now, I am curious what's going to happen on October 31st. Some of my Twitter detractors, my argument after the August deal with the Gottheimer 9 was that, I never said flat out, he won everything and progressives lost everything and now he's going to win the day. I never admitted that. I never was that definitive about it. I did argue, I thought he had the upper hand going into September 27th because while progressives could still lock arms and kill a vote on Sinema Portman, Bibb, what have you, you had this highway cliff looming over the negotiation, which Pelosi herself said was relevant. Pelosi said, look, we need to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill because it extends the Highway Trust Fund, which expires on September 30th. And we don't want to see financing infrastructure projects be disrupted. And she reiterated that in the last week of September. And some of certain progressives in my feed were like, well, you could still pass a stopgap. So that's not really a serious threat. And I was like, you could, but she isn't. She didn't put that in the continuing resolution. She's still saying these things. I'm not convinced Republicans in the Senate would agree to that. You would need 60 votes to get that done. So it didn't seem like that's going to happen. Now, it is what happened. The progressives did lock arms. And then at the last minute, they passed a standalone 30-day stopgap Highway Trust Fund extension, which Republicans in the Senate agreed to. So here I am, someone who said repeatedly that McConnell was doing the small bills. McConnell was not inducing maximum dysfunction and chaos and letting the government basically function. I didn't hear my own advice. I assumed at that moment McConnell would say, hey, you want the extension, go pass Bibb. Go pass the bill that I voted for in the Senate. And he didn't play that card. Now, what I learned that day was what Republicans told Democrats was, we'll do the 30 days because it doesn't cost any additional money. There's still some money in the Highway Trust Fund kitty that you can use for the month of October, but that's going to run out by the end of October. And so don't count on us to do this a second time if your negotiations aren't completed. So if Sinema really wants Sinema Portman to go first, she may still get that. They could hold out till the end of October and say, look, I still believe this should go first. I still think it's not a good idea for Democrats to own expiration of the Highway Trust Fund, and we're not going to get the stopgap the second time around. So again, I can't know that's what's going to happen, but we're certainly, we are 1 week into October. Plenty of time to have an agreement on the broader package, but not a lot of headway. The only headway we've had is progressives agreeing to some lower number, whatever that number is, where we haven't agreed much on the particulars of what's going to go within that number. And there's a philosophical disagreement between the moderates and the progressives. Are we doing a fewer things on long time frames because that's more honest budgeting and more stable financing for these programs, which is what the moderates say they want? Or are we doing everything we want in the first place, but, a couple years at a pop? So we technically are within a $2 trillion roughly window, but we all know we're going to get more money than that when these things get extended. Wink, wink, nod, nod. That broad decision hasn't been made yet. And within and because you could do half of each if you wanted to, some long, some short. But and which things get long, which things get short, or which things don't get funny at all, we seem to be nowhere with. So it's certainly not a given to me that they're going to negotiate the entire package in 3 weeks' time, because we don't seem to be moving that far along the field. Possible, I just can't assume it.
All right. Well, my right earbud has given out.
Really?
And it's because sometimes I will lay in bed and I sleep on my side and I listen to podcasts. So I have the right one, or I guess the left one is being charged. Mm-hmm. So I'm living on borrowed time here. So I'm down to one ear because of these darn new technological.
Well, let me slightly shift topic before we run out of time. Biden's poll numbers this week are genuinely bad. They're worse than middling. I mean, I think the average is still around 44%, but he had a Quinnipiac that was at 38. So you got to wonder, is it going to keep going down below? Is the average going to go below 44% if things keep going the way they're going? Is this, in your mind, normal ups and downs? And hey, once this package gets solved, he'll get the bump up. If COVID numbers keep going down, kids get their vaccine soon, those numbers will pop back up. So you can't live day to day with this sort of thing. You got to think long view. Or do you think he's doing a lot of things, manifestly wrong, and he needs to do a course correction to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, both, but mostly the latter. I think that so Biden doesn't have a cult. He's not a charismatic leader, unlike Trump and Obama. So he could keep going down. Like I think there were a lot of people with Trump that he just hit a point where like there was no more attrition possible. Like the people who were with Trump, a pretty substantial part of the country just loved Trump and was never going to abandon Trump. And like he literally could have shot somebody on Fifth Avenue or whatever, and he wouldn't have lost them. Like Biden doesn't really have that. He doesn't have the hardcore cult, true believers. And so again, I just think the fundamental problem with Biden is that he ran on a mandate of not being Trump, of being competent, of a return to normalcy. And then I think at some point he thought, we got these two senators we didn't know we were going to get these two senators from Georgia. Now I could be FDR. And I think that's sort of the original sin of the Biden administration. And I think everything has flowed from that since then. He probably would have gotten out of Afghanistan either way. Obviously, that's turned into a debacle. I mean, the latest story, I guess, is that at least reportedly, the suicide bomber behind the ISIS-K attack was released from prison. I guess in the weeks leading up to that, as I think as a result of our withdrawal. So. Yeah, it's just been a couple months, right, Bill? Of there hasn't really been a positive story in a couple months. It's nothing but bad news.
That's a point I made on Twitter yesterday. I mean, he hasn't had a good headline day since early August. If it's not Afghanistan, it's COVID. Spikes, disputes over boosters, questions about vaccine mandates, all that kind of stuff. There hasn't been a sense that he's on top of it in the way it felt like earlier in the year. I mean, not saying it's fair. I'm talking about perceptions and news coverage. And if it's on COVID, it's border crisis. If it's on border crisis, is that his agenda is stalled? If it's not his agenda stalled, it's the debt limit nonsense, so that maybe we're getting out of that soon. There hasn't been a day where it's like he got a clear win. And you're not going to get out of your poll rut until that tenor of coverage changes, because you're giving the media positive things to write about. And you could certainly say, look, these ups and downs happen, and he's going to land the two planes eventually. He's going to get both the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill, and that's going to bring his party together, and people are going to be happy that he did it. The bills themselves still poll well, even though his numbers are down. When you put out $3.5 trillion, social spending bill, like the public doesn't blanch at the number. I think it's down a little bit, but it's still a majority number. So it's all going to work out. And maybe, but
I think we could even, I think we could even debate whether it matters. I mean, theoretically, a president benefits from passing big legislation. But I think, I think that we got used to like what happened with, FDR, FDR comes in and passes all this New Deal legislation, and then like a LBJ later, and there was a real loyalty to them. I mean, if you read the Robert Caro book, The Path to Power, about LBJ, I mean, LBJ brought like electricity to the hill country of Texas, and there were people who lived there who hated him, but they voted for him forever because he was the guy who brought electricity to them and changed their lives. I don't know that works anymore.
Well,
I don't know that voters. I don't know that voters reward politicians for bringing home the bacon. Like
well, and we've seen already that, and some progressives, some people, some prominent people that I follow on Twitter have made note of. Gee, I really thought these child tax credit checks were going to really juice Biden's popularity, and they're not.
Right.
I mean, so like that understanding
like,
started to creep in.
Thanks for the money, but I'm pissed off about CRT.
Or whatever, Afghanistan or COVID or all sorts of things you can get mad about. So like that sense of the theory of the case not working out is like creeping in a little bit, but it hasn't prompted a broader rethink. They still are forging. Well, let's see if we can get the rest of this done, and that's going to be even more stuff for people, and people will really like us when we do that. Or and I was like sort of sitting alongside of that is maybe we're starting to lose the midterm regardless, but at least we'll get it. We'll get the policy. It'll be embedded, and maybe they'll be rewarded in 2024. Or if we're not, we're still helping people, and so we've done our good deed. What I would have done.
I think go for the bipartisan. Again, this is just me. I would have just been like, go for the bipartisan bill. It passed the Senate. Claim victory. You finally did Infrastructure Week. Nobody else could do it. You get points on the board. Why not?
And what my argument in agreeing with that is, I mean, you can't know it would cause a poll bump, but I think there's a chance that it would have. At least it would have been a good headline day as opposed to more bad headline days.
At least one.
And if he could get his own number up in the short run, I think that helps him negotiate the bigger bill. If he's back over 50%, he can more easily lean on Manchin and Sinema. If he's below 45, where's the pressure on Manchin and Sinema to do what he wants? Yeah. He's the one who's desperate.
Nothing succeeds like success. Like passing something would have theoretically given him momentum to get more. It gives you a win. It gives you confidence. They went with this other strategy, which is like all or nothing and holding things hostage and shooting hostages and yada, yada, yada. And it hasn't worked so far. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Hasn't worked out so far. And by the way, we should talk sometime. I'm not an expert by any means, but Virginia has this gubernatorial election.
Yeah.
And it's neck and neck, man. And it very well could go to the Republicans.
I still think McAuliffe's got the edge there. I mean, maybe you know Virginia better than I do.
I don't know.
I mean, Virginia still seems to me, if it was a more mainstream Republican, I might think.
He is. He is as mainstream as you can be.
He's a Trumper. He's a Trumper. This guy is, as Josh Kraushaar describes him, Mitt Romney in the Trump era. Like, he is as establishment mainstream as you could possibly be in this environment. But it's still in this environment, and he's still someone who is openly for Trump. He is stridently, anti-abortion. Virginia is a blue state. We're like in a consistently blue state.
Okay, but you've also got history, which shows, generally speaking, Virginia will go the other direction of the party in power. So, they went with what?
McAuliffe won in 2013, right?
He's the one guy to break the trend, and the question then is that an anomaly, or is the trend, is the curse broken, or whatever? By the way, this was put in place, I believe, by the Harry Bird, not Robert C. Harry Bird machine in Virginia.
To have one-term limits.
Well, not just that, but they had the staggered elections.
Oh, to be on the off year.
I believe it was because they were afraid that when Reagan would sweep in Republicans in Virginia, and so I could be wrong about my math, but I believe it's the Harry Bird.
But
but whatever the case may be, also you've got Joe Biden obviously stumbling now, right, in the Dems in disarray story. So like, I agree with you. I think Virginia is a purple state that probably leans blue, but you throw in the history thing, you throw in Biden's performance, you throw in the fact that Youngkin is as mainstream as possible in this environment.
He's not a Larry Hogan. If you had a Larry Hogan type in Virginia, that guy might have won in this environment. I'm skeptical that a Youngkin, he's a median Republican. He's a median Republican in the Trump era. But Virginia is not, I don't think there's no evidence that that purple. It's been pretty blue in several election cycles now.
I think I put him in the Ed Gillespie category, not in the Ken Cuccinelli category. Like if I had to think of someone, I would put him, he's an Ed Gillespie. And like Ed Gillespie lost, right? But it was very close. And this is probably a better environment for being a Republican right now. So.
Well, we have a month. We have a month on that.
Well, and look, I'm 6.7 miles or something like that from Loudoun County, Virginia. So I go to Virginia a lot, Northern Virginia, like Alexandria, and also Loudoun County.
Now, Loudoun is an exurb of D.C., which used to be pretty red, but was quite blue in 2020.
So that's what I'm. That's what's informing me. It's certainly not scientific.
But you're saying.
But I think it's close.
You're saying in Loudoun. You're seeing Youngkin momentum in Loudoun. Am I pronouncing it right?
Young men come. Yes. Young Mintum.
I lost my train of thought, but we should probably wrap things up anyway. Anything what you want to
keep an eye on Virginia? Yeah, I interviewed, you mentioned Hannah Trudeau. I interviewed Tom Nichols this week. I'll hold up his book. We had a really good discussion. It's called Our Own Worst Enemy, Tom Nichols. And we had a really good talk about the book and about politics. It's The Assault from Within on Modern Democracy. Check out. So it's at my YouTube page. Go to youtube.com/Matt Lewis. Subscribe and check out the video interview I did with him. And you can also, I interviewed Glenn Greenwald recently. I interviewed Rod Dreher recently. I've interviewed Bill Kristol recently. So it's quite an eclectic mix, and you can watch all those videos on the YouTube page.
Despite my, I registered my protest for interviewing Greenwald, but nevertheless, you're getting a lot of heavy hitters on the show.
It's going really well. And I tell you what, though, monetizing YouTube, it ain't easy, man. You got to hit 1,000 subscribers and X number of hours watched. Then get this, though, you meet that goal. Then you've got to enter in all sorts of tax W-9 information and bank routing information. But wait, there's more. Then they will mail you. You have to have a physical address. They will mail you a PIN number. They won't text it to you. They won't email. They physically mail it to you. And it comes in a nondescript Google envelope that my wife almost threw away. Then you enter that PIN in, but wait, that's not enough either. Now I'm in the review process of, it could last months to see if I am moral enough to I'm channeling Arlo Guthrie here a little bit, Bill, but to see if I am moral enough to put up YouTube videos. And so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. If I can make any money, just run a couple ads is all I'm asking. Wet the beak a little bit.
Well, it's not published yet, but I should have something up in the Washington Monthly soon about what Democrats and hopefully Republicans can do on election subversion. Maybe we can talk about that more next week, but that should be coming out, I think, in a day or so.
Yeah. And since I can't monetize my YouTube videos, you could go to patreon.com/Matt Lewis or patreon.com/Bill Scher and throw a couple bucks our way, and then you'll get some goodies, including invitation on our, fortnightly, semi-weekly, whenever we can do it, our DM Zoom calls, which you're a participant if you want to be. You can sit back, smile and dial and watch and soak up the wisdom that is Bill Scher as he drops historical knowledge, or you can actually be part of the conversation. So I would encourage you to do that.
And we're going tomorrow for DM Zoom?
I think so. If you want to go, man, we can do it.
My schedule's a little tricky tomorrow. I think we can work it out, but
Okay.
let's talk, okay?
Okay, we'll talk, and then we'll see you back here in the DMZ next week.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.